Just a few weeks ago, on June the 20th, West Virginia celebrated our 156th birthday. There's plenty to celebrate about West Virginia, from its breathtaking beauty and wonderful families to our kind and hospitable West Virginia spirit. But unfortunately, West Virginia has its challenges too, including health challenges. We have some of the highest rates in the nation for heart disease, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and arthritis. And while there are many non-pharmaceutical steps people are taking to prevent, for many, their prescription medicine is the difference between wellness and illness, or even between life and death. That's why it's so important that West Virginians are able to secure their medications, and that we as a Congress make sure that they are not paying too much for those medications. Of all the issues that my constituents come to, whether it's a phone call, a casual running into them at the grocery store, or a letter, this is the issue I hear most about, because it's something that affects so much their West Virginian way of life. And it's something that affects them every day. If it doesn't affect them, it affects somebody in their family. The same can be said for Americans across this country, and that's why it has become one of our nation's top priorities. One that is shared by Republicans and Democrats, and one that is significant bipartisan focus of this administration and this Congress. It is a far-reaching problem with many different factors contributing to it, and that's why we have to address it on many different fronts. And the chairman of the Health Committee is here today. He has worked through his committee diligently, and I applaud him for his efforts and look forward to joining him on the floor in support of those efforts. As we all know, the path a medication takes from the manufacturer to the patient is very complex, with many factors impacting the price a consumer pays. And while making changes to this pathway is very important, my constituents really don't care about the pathway. They're more concerned with the total on their bill that their pharmacist is ringing up. And that's why I have focused a lot of my personal efforts on the important role that our pharmacists play in lowering drug costs. In many small towns and rural communities, which is my entire state, pharmacists are the healthcare providers that people go to quite regularly. And they are often some of the most trusted and friendliest and welcoming. And so it is essential that patients, especially seniors, are able to access the local pharmacy. West Virginians and Americans across the country should be able to trust that their pharmacist is not being restricted about telling them how to get the best prescription drug prices. They need to know they aren't facing higher cost sharing for drugs and being accelerated into the coverage gap, or the donut hole phase of Medicare D, due to an overly complicated system of fees and price concessions, which nobody really understands, certainly not at the pharmacist's desk. In order to ensure seniors have access to a pharmacy of their choice, Senator Brown and I introduced the Insurance Seniors Access to Local Pharmacies, our last Congress. We're going to be reintroducing this bill, which will require that community pharmacists in medically underserved areas be allowed to participate in the Medicare Part D preferred pharmacy networks. Why is this important? If a local pharmacy is not included in a preferred network, a senior must either switch to a preferred network pharmacy, which could be a lot farther away or less convenient, or pay higher co-payments and co-insurance to access their local pharmacy. In some cities and towns, you can find a pharmacy on nearly every corner. But in rural areas, that's just not the case. And accessing a preferred pharmacy could require significant time and difficult travel. Additionally, many seniors rely on their local pharmacies to not only access prescription drugs, but also to receive those needed services like preventive screenings and medication therapy management. As important as access to a local pharmacy is, it is also essential that patients can trust their pharmacist to let them know which payment method provides the most savings when purchasing their prescription drugs. I was proud to join Senator Collins last year as a co-sponsor of the Patient Right to Know Drug Prices Act. This common sense bill, which the President signed into law in October, bans the use of the pharmacy gag clause. It was really kind of hard to believe that it still existed. These clauses were put into place by insurers and pharmacy benefit managers, and they prevented our pharmacists from proactively telling consumers that their prescriptions could cost less if they paid out of pocket rather than relying on their insurance plan. I'm also currently working with Senators Tester, Cassidy, and Brown on legislation that would help improve transparency and accuracy in Medicare Part D drug spending. Our bill would reform the application process of pharmacy price concessions, also known as direct and indirect remuneration, or DIR fees, in the Medicare Part D program. It sounds complicated, but it's driving the cost of our pharmaceuticals up. This will ensure that our seniors are not facing higher cost sharing for their drugs, or again, being accelerated into the coverage gap. It will also help ensure local pharmacies are able to stay open. This is critical. We've got to keep our local pharmacies open for a vast majority of rural America and have them continue to stay open and continue to serve Medicare beneficiaries and other communities who rely on them. And it would provide needed financial certainty for these pharmacies, which are often small businesses. My colleagues and I hope to see this legislation included in the soon-to-be-released Senate Finance package. These are just a few examples of where we are working to lower prescription drug costs. I've been listening to my colleagues and heard a lot of other ideas. They are small but much-needed steps that can be, and already are, making a real difference in our constituents' lives. But our work is far from over. We have to continue looking at both common sense and complex solutions to the problem. This is a complex problem. And while as a Congress and a country, we may not agree on the best way to do that, we do all agree that it's a problem that needs to be solved. I look forward to continuing working with Senator Alexander and Senator Lankford, who are on the floor here today, and my other colleagues and the administration to find that pathway forward to lowering the cost of prescription drugs. I yield back.